Welcome to How to End a Party, the AFAB white mid-30 podcast people who don't want to talk about true crime. So if that sounds interesting to you, stick around. I'm Chris.
And I am April.
And for legal purposes, nothing we say here can be construed as advice.
Absolutely not. These are all the topics that will help you clear the room when you want everyone to get out of your house already at the end of the party.
Yeah, if you're like us where you're massively introverted but also like to have a social life, we know. It's weird.
Mm-hmm.
And if you need people to leave your house, you can just play one of these episodes. This one in particular already makes me feel like leaving.
You don't want to hear me info dump about my hyperfixation?
No, I absolutely do.
Krista, how could you?
I know, I am actually the worst. So today, April, what are we talking about?
So we are going to start off by talking about our favorite historical queers.
Yay!
And then do we want to spoil the second half of the episode, or do we want to keep it a surprise?
I think we'll keep it a surprise for now.
We'll keep it a surprise.
We're just going to keep everybody on edge. Because if you haven't left the party already, like, this second part will definitely make you leave. I don't know. Sure. Our podcast is trash. That's the whole point. Anyway,
Yes.
Go on.
All right. So my favorite historical queer is like 90% based on vibes.
Okay.
All right.
I love it.
This is a person that I really vibe with. Their whole energy.
Yeah.
They are a poet, a playwright, and an intellectual. Something of a fashion icon, I would say.
Now I'm like, Cher?
No, it's not Cher.
Damn.
Everything I've ever learned about this person is either delightful or painfully relatable. Also, whenever I see images of this person, I just think, yeah, he's friend-shaped.
Oh, he's friend-shaped.
He sadly died young, but will likely live forever due to his work and his legacy. Celebrated in part for the very qualities that he was censured and persecuted for during his life.
Now I'm like, was Galileo queer?
The man is also damn quotable, and I actually have a few of my favorite quotes of his
Oh, I'm excited!
that I would like to share.
Yes!
But before I do that, I do have to make a confession.
Uh-oh.
When I was still on the dating and clubbing scene in my 20s, not much, but occasionally.
Yeah.
You always get those situations where there's a guy who just won't leave you alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept a picture of this person on my phone. So I would say, oh, I have a boyfriend. And when the guy would inevitably be like, I don't believe you, I'd show him a picture of this person. Because I was like, this guy is hitting on someone clearly not interested in a bar. They're not going to recognize this photo as like a historical queer person. And they never did. It worked every time.
I love that. It's very subliminal queer education. And I'm about it.
So do you want to hear some of my favorite quotes?
Yes, I would love to. I'm still trying to guess who it is.
All right. So the first one is, I don't want to go to heaven. None of my friends are there.
I think I know who it is.
Do you know who it is?
I think I know who it is.
Do you want to hear one more
Yes.
quote, or do you want to guess?
No, keep quoting, because if it is who I think it is, then I love their quotes.
The other one is, you will always be fond of me. I represent to you all the sins you never had the courage to commit.
Ooh, that's a life motto.
It really speaks to the religious trauma.
Yes.
A thing is not necessarily true because a man dies for it.
Ooh, that's good too. Can I guess?
Yeah.
Is it Oscar Wilde?
It is Oscar Wilde.
Yay! Love Oscar Wilde. What made you choose him?
Just, again, vibes.
Yeah.
Again, everything I've ever learned about the man is either delightful or painfully relatable.
Yeah.
And also I see photos of him and I was like, we could hang.
Yeah.
We'd hang.
Yeah. I think so. I feel like a cocktail party with Oscar Wilde would be,
Please.
I was going to say, unironically, see, to me, he's one of those queer icons where, like, yeah, if you were to say, like, Oscar Wilde, like, yeah, okay, I know who that is. But if I were pressed to say anything that he's written, I think I'm a bad person for that. I don't think I can think of one.
The importance of being earnest.
Oh,
An ideal husband.
Okay.
The picture of Dorian Gray.
Oh, yeah, that's very
Yeah.
queer coded. Yeah.
Extremely.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Any other fun facts about Oscar Wilde?
Oscar Wilde was definitely queer.
Mm-hmm.
There's some debate if he was gay or bisexual.
Yeah.
But he did actually, he had a sweetheart, was a woman. Her name was Florence.
Mm.
And she married his friend instead of him. And he was heartbroken about it. And that friend's name was Bram Stoker.
Oh, Jesus.
I have such a love-hate relationship with that man, but that is another
That's another episode, which is good because there will be more of these.
Yeah.
So if there are still guests at your party, we're sorry, and let's move on. All right, so I wanted to play a game with my favorite queer, which sounds weird, but is this Q, LGB, or T?
Ooh, okay.
Is my Q for you. All right, so I'm going to tell you this person's name. If you know who it is, pretend like you don't.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Dr. Alan Hart?
Sadly, I am actually not, and that's not me acting.
Yes! I mean, oh no, you're about to get educated. Okay, so Dr. Alan Hart lived from 1890 to 1962. Mm-hmm. He was born in Kansas, but his dad died of typhoid. And then his mother and the family moved to Oregon. That's where she got remarried. And at that point, Alan would do chores and stuff on the farm and help out and do things there. And his grandparents would like make him little wooden toys, which I thought was kind of cute.
That's cute.
Yeah, he was also like really tough. So like one time when he was working on the farm, he cut off part of his finger with an axe and like dressed it himself without telling anybody in his family because he's badass. So he excelled in writing, which again, like Oscar Wilde, a bunch of queers seem to be really good at writing. I'm not saying everyone.
We have things to express.
We do. We love our words. Mm-hmm. But used to write articles for newspapers under the pseudonym Robert Allen Bamford Jr.
Why does that name sound more familiar?
I don't know. Because you're probably more well-read than I am. So he graduated with his Doctorate of Medicine in 1917. And during that time, tuberculosis was a big issue. Do you recall what tuberculosis is?
I recall that it was sometimes called consumption.
Yes.
And I remember that Satine from Moulin Rouge died of it.
Yes.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Sorry.
Though also, if you're here for the queer, you know.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, you're possibly too young to be watching this. Turn this off and go watch Moulin Rouge.
It's a classic. Right. Listen to that or watch that before you listen to this. You'll thank us later. Okay, so yes, tuberculosis was also known as consumption. It's a bacteria that mainly infects the lungs, but can also infect other parts of the body. So it can infect like bones and get into that kind of tissue. The reason I bring that up is because often you don't have any symptoms until it's too late. Like the bacteria has taken over. And so it has been around forever. And certain Egyptian mummies have been shown to have tubercular degeneration, which I'm proud of myself for saying, nice. In their bones.
Wow.
Yeah. So to this day, it's a life expectancy of 50-50 if not properly screened and treated. I'm not going to get into all the details about tuberculosis, but I feel like it's important to understand because Dr. Hurt's work is a lot around tuberculosis. Yeah.
Oh, wait. Sorry. I just realized why... John Green. Are you familiar with John Green?
Yeah.
The novelist. He is always going on about tuberculosis.
Interesting.
He is on a one-man mission to end tuberculosis.
Good.
It's very inspiring.
I feel like it's been around long enough. Mm-hmm. At its time.
And there's medical technologies to protect people from it. They're just not as available as they could be.
Right. Exactly.
And that's the problem he's like focused on.
Exactly. And we're going to talk about that. Ooh. But also, if you want to learn more about tuberculosis, I'm pretty sure Sawbones did an episode on them. Sawbones is a great
Yes.
podcast if you haven't listened to them.
McElroy affiliation.
Yes, the McElroy family. So during Dr. Alan Hart's time, tuberculosis was actually the #1 killer in America.
Mm.
And back then it was called a bunch of different names, including, it's German,
Okay.
Koch's disease.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it affected your cock, but maybe it did.
I mean, you did say it could affect other tissues in the body.
Yeah, typically like bone though. But, I don't know, I'm not a doctor, maybe it did. A cock doctor? That's not me.
No.
Consumption, which is weird since we were talking about cocks. It was also called the White Plague, King's Evil, and gibbous.
Gibbous?
Gibbous.
Like the moon when it's getting fat again?
Mm-hmm.
Why gibbous?
If I had to guess, it's because it, affected your blood vessels and made you look really pale. And so, it was probably like, oh, you're looking full like the moon.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's just a guess. I have no fucking clue.
I mean, it would make sense.
Dr. Hart was one of the first to actually document similarities between all these different names and their symptoms. So it's this disease that goes by all these different names, and we're seeing all these different things come through, but what makes them different? He actually wrote it down and said, wait a second, I think all of these are the same thing. And so he reasoned that the best way to treat this disease was with early detection. So if you know you have it earlier, especially if you've got like a 50-50 chance, you can increase your chances if you find out sooner, sort of like John Green is saying. And you can use less harsh medications and not get a deadly infection, blah, blah, blah. So how did he do that? Any guesses?
I have no idea.
Magic.
No.
Famously
Famously effective medical care.
Yes. The magic.
Thoughts and prayers.
Yes. Thoughts and prayers. I'm dead. The magic of X-rays. So X-rays were actually invented when Hart was 5 years old. And they were sort of like today, more often used to identify bone fractures and tumors. But he thought, wait a minute, if I aim these at the lungs, can I see an infection before it becomes an infection? So in 1937, he was hired as Idaho's tuberculosis control officer. There he established, I included all this in my notes because I don't do anything halfway, and I don't have an off button.
That's fine. We're trying to clear this room at this party. You're doing great.
Again, if you're not gone yet, stick around. It's just going to get worse. So he established mobile and fixed location screening stations. So like movable X-ray was not really a thing, and he helped to make that more accessible. And he also changed the language around his practice, which I love because this is so like harm reductive. So he called himself a chest doctor and his patients chest patients in order to eliminate any stigma associated with tuberculosis.
I love that.
Yeah, very, very like forward thinking. He wrote articles and books on his findings, and he trained others on how to detect and treat tuberculosis. Those books are actually still used today as the foundational text for treating doctors for treating tuberculosis. Either way, fun side fact: antibiotics weren't widely used until 1940. So, yeah. Later in his career, he moved to Connecticut and basically did the same thing for them that he did in Idaho, and he helped save thousands of lives in the Northeast. So that's Dr. Alan Hart. Yay!
Sounds like a very cool person.
So it's time to guess.
Okay.
Is Dr. Hart L, G, B, or T?
Ooh, C.
C is not a letter. Try again.
I'm going to say T.
I'm so bummed because you're right. I really thought I was going to trick you on that one. Yes, Dr. Alan Hart was born Alberta Lucille Hart. And his mother, unfortunately, never really supported his life as a man. But when he lived on the farm as a child, he dressed, played, and worked in traditionally masculine roles. Which is why I think it was really sweet that his grandparents would like make him wooden trains and other toys that were like stereotypically masculine because they were like, yeah, we don't care. And his mom would buy him dolls and he like didn't want to play with those. And so his grandparents were like, fine, we'll just like make you a train.
I love a supportive grandparent.
I know. We don't have enough of those.
No.
In school, he would write under a pseudonym, which was not outrageous during that time because women often would write under pseudonyms of male names because patriarchy. And he did fight, however, to not have to write articles about women's needs or concerns. So he had to really sort of stand up for himself and write about things that he thought were interesting and meaningful, which were often traditionally masculine subjects. His degree was issued to him in his birth name, which is unfortunate for a lot of reasons. Obviously, dead naming someone is not a cool move, even for the 1940s. But also it caused a lot of trouble for him in finding work because he would say, oh yeah, I'm a doctor, and they'd hire him. But then once they start looking for records, it's not Dr. Alan Hurt who has the degree.
Yeah.
So when he became an adult, he actually looked for psychiatric help and surgery in order to continue passing as male. He is recognized as the first transgender man in America. And in 1917, when he was 27, and the same year that he got his medical degree, he requested a trusted surgeon and friend to eliminate menstruation and the possibility of becoming pregnant. Initially, he made a eugenic argument as part of his justification for the procedure, which again, 1940s.
Not great.
Not great. Basically saying, like, if you, like, you don't want someone who's twisted like me continuing to reproduce. Which,
I mean,
I've said weirder things.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I went through a whole phase where I was like, if I could choose, do you think I'd choose to be this way? So I can't get on him too much about that.
Right.
By the way, I would choose to be this way.
Good for you. So the doctor, the surgeon that he trusted in, was initially kind of reluctant and was quoted as saying that he, being Hurt, was extremely intelligent and not mentally ill, but afflicted with a mysterious disorder which I have no explanation.
Wild.
Yeah. Important to know, though.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. Because we're not done with this story. Hello? Is anyone still there? You shouldn't be. Leave. God. In 1918, the year after he had the surgery completed, is when he legally changed his name. And then he interned at San Francisco Hospital, but a former classmate outed him.
Ugh.
And in my notes, I have in all caps, bitch.
Yeah, that's a bitch move.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You don't, I mean, times, but like,
Yeah.
It's none of your business.
Right. Like, do you want some, I don't know why this is the first thing that came to mind, but like, you want someone scrolling through your profile history on Pornhub and being like, oh, look at all the weird stuff that you watch, or like, look at all the, and then like going and taking that to people so that you lose your job? No.
First of all, if you have an account with a watch history on Pornhub, we need to have another conversation. That is when you need a VPN, you don't sign into anything, and you go incognito, my friend.
I may have shown too much of my hand here. Okay, so 1918 was also the year that he first got married to Inez Stark. And then in 1920, Bayer, the Bayer company that produces medication, started producing male hormones, and Hart began to take them, noticing physical changes that he was seeing, including a lowered voice and facial hair.
Nice.
Yeah, so started taking hormone therapy. Yeah.
See, that's why I guess T is because the pioneering, we need a thing. The thing isn't here. So I'm going to create the thing or repurpose an existing thing into what I need it to be.
That's very trans.
That's very, yes.
I'm trying to think of like all the LGs and Bs that I know and being like, and as pansexuals, whoop whoop. Just like, no, we don't have the gumption to actually change the stuff. We just figure out better ways for us to fit in and stand out.
Whereas another quote, not from Oscar Wilde, but my favorite quote, which one day I will have tattooed on my body, is "Becoming me was the greatest creative project of my life."
Yeah. True story.
Mm-hmm.
True story. So because of all of the moving, back to Dr. Alan Hart, because of all the moving that happened in his early career due to being continuously outed, his wife left him in 1923, and she divorced him in 1925. But in that same year, 1925, he met his second wife, Edna Ruddock, and they stayed together until his death in 1962. Which
Edna was a real one.
Yeah, I think it's just important to note, like, again, number one, trans people are people and super cool and can accomplish really, like, important things just like other people, right? Like, people are people. Yeah. But I also think it's important that, like, he had a love life that was wonderful.
Like any story of like queer resilience and queer joy of any kind is so important, because at least I was brought up with this narrative that like queer people led sad, lonely, like desperate lives and then died young and alone, and that's simply never been true. Like that happens to some queer people. It also happens to some straight people. Do you know that loneliness among men is on the rise?
What?
But like, it's so important to have these stories of like, this person was trans openly in a time that nobody would ever consider to be like super progressive or accepting.
Yeah.
And lived this, incredible life, not without hardship, but, got married, and that person stayed with him until he died, and he did all this incredible stuff.
I know.
That we still benefit from today.
It's incredible. I think about like the idea of like the conversations we have about trans identity, right? It's 2023. We have these really open conversations about it. We have these...
It's 2024.
Oh, fuck me. It's 2024. The year of trans, I guess.
Yay.
I don't know. But like we have all these really like open conversations, and like when I was a kid, the conversation about like transgender anything was mostly like transvestite, which is like an outdated term now, but like was not accepting, was not loving, and it was not widespread. It was a joke, right?
Yeah.
Like more often than not. And to think that Dr. Hart lived through the influenza of 1918 and World War I, World War II, and made it until 1962. So like right before Vietnam.
Wow.
It's incredible.
It's amazing. I love this.
I know. That's what I was like, his life is so like, how are we not teaching about him in school?
I'm so glad I didn't leave this party.
Shut up. That's the whole point. Damn it. All right, so I had to get back to the facts. Okay.
Yes.
So he wrote a ton of short stories and novels in addition to his medical work. After his death, his wife established a research fund for leukemia in both of their names, and that is actually what his mother passed away from. Oh. So in his will, this is kind of sad because he accomplished all these wonderful and amazing things, but of course no good deed goes unpunished. In his will, he wanted to have all pictures and personal writings destroyed of himself in order to further protect his legacy as a male doctor. This was carried out in the year following his death. And the one thing he overlooked were the doctor's notes from the doctor who did the surgery for him. So the reason we know any of this is because a nosy guy named Jonathan Ned Katz, credit where credit is due, discovered these doctor's notes posthumously and sort of was able to connect all of the dots and put it together. One last unfortunate thing, because truly no good deed goes unpunished. This is also just like a what's the word? Cautionary tale for the community of like, don't be a dick, right? So Katz, even though he was initially credited with connecting these dots, thought that Hart was a lesbian, not trans, and called transgenderism quack medicine.
Oy.
Yeah, and so some lesbian groups claimed Hart's story as dead naming him rather than as Alan for fundraising purposes. So they would throw a Lucille Hart fundraiser banquet to celebrate the lesbianism aspect of it. But the trans community, to their credit, has protested and fought against the naming and for the transgender reclamation of Hart's experience. And in 1996, they officially renamed the fundraising dinner the Right to Pride. So, stop the infighting.
Progress.
That's all I gotta say. Those are my notes on Dr. Alan Hart.
That was fantastic.
Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you for playing my game and letting me talk about a queer that I like.
I love it. I love it so much. I learned so much.
Oh, yay.
I have to read more about Dr. Alan Hart.
Yeah. There's, other details and stuff that I left out, obviously, because this is just a podcast. But it was very interesting learning about him because, like I said, his lifetime spanned this weird time in history that to even be considered openly trans now carries so much stigma, but back then just feels like it's impossible.
Yeah.
And I feel like, to me, these feel like the kind of narratives that were always kept away from me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wasn't allowed to know these things. Like, we weren't allowed to talk about this kind of stuff in how I grew up because it was dangerous or whatever. But to kind of know that these people existed, these people, that people like Dr. Alan Hart existed.
Yeah, that people like us existed.
Yeah, long before podcasting was a thing.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that I actually, small tangent. May I have a small tangent?
Well, I've been talking for 15 minutes, so yes.
Okay. So I actually remember, I forget how I came across it. I think I was looking for, I was looking for books of recipes.
Okay.
From Southern Appalachia. Because it's really easy to find Southern recipes. You can find Appalachian recipes, but specifically recipes from the little Appalachian foothills area that I grew up in, because I don't have access to all of the cookbooks that my grandmother used, which were church cookbooks for fundraisers. So it's not like I can find them online anywhere now.
Yeah.
So I was looking online for this, and I came across a book called White Trash Cooking.
Love it.
Fantastic. And it had all of the things I was looking for and then some. And it was written by a gay man.
I love that.
And, oh my God, what was his name? I believe it was Ernest Matthew Mickler was his name. And I was so excited to find this, not only little piece of my Appalachian heritage, but this little piece of queer history.
Yeah.
And I was also so mad because I was this is the kind of thing that I would never have heard about growing up. Anybody who was queer or might be queer, it just wasn't talked about. I had family members who were confirmed bachelors that, people, there were significant looks that the aunties would give each other over dinner and stuff, but they would never talk about it with us kids. And we never heard any of the good stories.
Yeah.
We never heard any of the happy stories of the beautiful lives lived.
Yeah.
And also, I was born in 88. So right, in the midst of the AIDS epidemic when, there was enormous backlash against the queer community because of that. And hand in hand with that. So anytime we find just some little piece of queer history, some little story that we weren't told, it's a weird combination of excitement and joy and anger.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have to feel so alone.
Yeah.
For the first, 20 years of my life.
Yeah.
I didn't have to feel this alone. That feeling of loneliness was orchestrated by people in my life who thought they were protecting me, I guess.
Yeah.
But you can hide the queer from the girl, but
It's funny because it's true.
It's so true.
I was talking, if I may have a tangent.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
of course.
Thank you. So
We're gonna clear this party if it kills us.
for real. Like, somebody start farting. It's about to get bad. No. Okay, so I recently visited my brother and sister-in-law, and we were having a conversation and talking about, like, being queer. And I was making a comment about how a particular celebrity was attractive, and but I like felt like I couldn't have a crush on her because she's very problematic. Gina Carano, for those who know, you know. And so I was talking about how, like, I just felt so attracted to her, but felt like, you know, very conflicted about it. And my sister-in-law was like, I don't think I've ever, she was like, I think I can appreciate other people's beauty, like male and female, but I don't think I've ever looked at a woman and thought, I would kiss her, or like anything like that.
Wild.
And I went, oh, I have. I went, oh, really? That's so weird, because I used to do that as a kid.
Oh, I know.
As a child.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And this is going to segue eventually into our second topic because you mentioned the magic word.
The magic word.
But
you can reveal it, I guess, if you want to.
I will in a second.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it's so funny because I've had those conversations with family members. Although it's weird, in my family, I feel like I get 60-40, where 40% is them being like, yeah, I've never thought of that.
Yeah.
And 60% is them being like, everybody has those thoughts sometimes. And me being like, who's going to tell them?
Who's going to say?
Because I did not sign up for this.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I remember, I used to ride the bus home in high school. And there was this girl on the bus who was so mean.
Ooh.
And
like a hot mean or like a bully mean?
Both.
Ooh.
It was very confusing for me as a
that's
child.
fair. That's fair.
But I distinctly remember like fantasizing about kissing her.
Mm-hmm.
And I also distinctly remember that when I had those thoughts, it would terrify me so much that I would immediately replace her in my mind with any guy. It did not matter who, as long as it was a guy.
Yeah.
And it was so, like, looking back, I convinced myself that I could choose because I did feel attraction to men as well.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I can just ignore whatever that is. Like, that is Satan trying to lead me astray.
I laugh because I totally relate. So whatever that is.
But Satan was damn persistent, apparently. Because
God damn him.
I remember as far back as being like 5 or 6, having little crushes on girls that I was friends with. And like, actually, you know what? I'll tell you that story after we're not recording.
Okay. Sounds great. That'll get the party started later. All right. So now we're moving on to the second half of our episode.
Yes. If you're still here, congratulations.
Again, like, you're not getting a prize. The whole point is to leave.
No, if you stay to the end, your prize is you're one of us and you're stuck with us now.
Oh, I actually am down for that deal. Like, if you listen to this whole episode, that means you have to continue to listen to us.
Yes.
Suck it.
Dubious winnings. So our second topic is going to be celebrity culture.
Celebrity culture.
And I'm going to talk for like 15 minutes straight, probably.
Do it, because when we were prepping for this episode, I was like, yeah, I have like 3 pages on my favorite historical queer.
How many pages did you have on celebrity culture?
Yeah, 0. I was like, I don't know. So let's let you start.
Okay. Well, so tell me one celebrity that you know something about other than their name and a show they've been in.
Gina Carano.
Okay. All right. That's fair. All right. What do you know about Gina Carano?
She's hot. No. So I know that she's a Trump supporter.
Ooh.
Yeah, which is very problematic. She also was a pro wrestler before she became an actress. So very fit, very muscular.
Was she in a Star Wars show?
She was.
Oh, I know. Yeah, that's unfortunate.
I know.
Because she is hot.
I know.
Oh,
That's why I'm like,
tragic.
I have to remind myself all the time, you don't stick your dick in crazy. Like, no matter how hot she is, the answer has to be no. But like, she would make me take third looks. Anyway, moving on.
I just reminded of that Mindy Calling meme, that scene from the Mindy Project that became a meme where she said something like, I don't know, like your face makes me horny, but your mouth makes my brain angry or something like that.
I don't think I've seen that, but yes, that is exactly true.
Yeah, that's relatable. Okay, so celebrity culture. We're inundated with it.
Absolutely.
All the time. And depending on who the celebrity is, there are some celebrities that it feels like you just can't escape knowing things about them. There are so many celebrities, I know everything I know about them against my will.
That's true.
Because it's just everywhere. It's treated like news. What celebrities are doing are treated like news and like a form of entertainment in and of itself.
Right.
So that is a problem on its own, in my opinion. And that's before you even get into the really toxic shit like paparazzi and the invasion of privacy. Like there's a whole profession whose whole job is to essentially stalk and photograph and video people.
Right.
That's fucked up, you know?
Yeah, which like not to shit on you if that's your job, but also maybe consider getting a new job. Like that doesn't seem, when your job devalues another human's rights, you might not need to do that job.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, I don't, see, I try not to be a dick and just assume people's lives and circumstances, but I'm also like, there comes a point where if your whole profession is somehow exploitative or shitty, like, yeah, I don't have a problem shitting on you a little bit for that.
That's true. Well, and I think the problem with celebrity culture is that happens at both ends, right?
Yeah.
That's happening at the top where the producers are like, we want somebody who looks like this. You don't look like this, so bye. And it's happening at the bottom of, we're going to follow you around and stalk you all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's that aspect of it. There's like turning the lives of people into like a source of entertainment because they have a skill.
Yeah.
Whether that skill is music or whether that skill is acting. Those are kind of the two biggest ones, but you do get things like celebrity authors, celebrity artists as well. But especially with the acting and the music, that's where you see a lot of the really big excesses of celebrity culture.
Yeah.
And it's not just in how we treat celebrities. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, the poor celebrities the whole time, I promise. There's also, like, the things that we allow and the things that we kind of dismiss and hand wave and will accept from celebrities. Like, if you have fans and a platform, you can probably do almost anything, and there are going to be people who will defend you.
Yeah.
On the basis that they like whatever you've created enough to overlook who you've hurt in the process.
Okay.
That I actually, a recent example comes to mind is, are you familiar with the Try Guys?
Somewhat.
And were you familiar at all with the whole Ned Fulmer cheating scandal?
Nope.
So one of the Try Guys...
This is why I have 0 pages.
So, quick summary.
Yeah.
Try Guys used to be 4 guys, now it's down to 3.
Yeah.
One of them, the fourth one, was a guy named Ned Fulmer, who was, his whole personality in the Try Guys was essentially like, he was my wife guy. Always talking about his wife and how much he loved his wife, etc. And then it came out that he was cheating on her with an employee of his.
Oh, fuck.
And it was a huge scandal. The other 3 Try Guys, like, they handled it really well in terms of, like, they immediately started an investigation. They cut ties with him, etc. But, like, they gave him more consequences than, like, 90% of the men identified during Me Too in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But what's so shitty about it is that, like, he was... Yes, there's a level of like he was cheating. Like that's shitty, interpersonally and maybe morally. But then there was also the fact that he was cheating with someone whose paychecks he signed.
Yep.
And there's an inherent power imbalance there.
Yep.
And that is when, and there was also things like he was really skeezy about the way he addressed it. Like he kept putting this big emphasis on the fact that it was a consensual workplace relationship. And it was like,
that doesn't matter.
You're still her boss, dude.
Yeah.
But like now, recently it's come out that his wife took him back and he got a job at BuzzFeed and he's like very much gearing up for a comeback. And that girl has kind of lost everything.
Mm.
Like her fiance dumped her, which I don't blame him for.
Yeah.
But she also like, I don't think she has that job anymore.
Dang.
Like there's just, she also like, her social media is a nightmare. Like the comment section on her social media is a nightmare. Even videos, like old videos she was in, people have gone back to like watch the old videos and comment things and like kind of pick apart her behavior.
Yeah.
And things like that. And there's a lot of nastiness. Like he's gearing up for a comeback and her life is still in shambles.
Yeah.
And they both did something wrong, but he did something arguably worse.
Right. Trash, trash, trash.
Like he was married with kids and this was his employee. He's going to be fine.
It's hard. I like have to ride this line because I do believe that everybody deserves dignity and to be treated with kindness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I can't be upset with him if the life that he has rebuilt for himself is one that he can fall asleep at night. You know what I mean? Like if he has really made peace with it and said, you know what, this is it, this is behind me, and now I'm going to focus on what's important to me, and that makes him happy, then I'm for it. But I also don't think that people shouldn't have to deal with the consequences. Yeah. Right? Like, and this seems to be a pretty big consequence that he doesn't have to deal with.
Yeah. I also don't like that there's almost always more consequences, A, for the woman in a situation like this, and B, for the person who was on the wrong end of the power imbalance.
Yeah.
But yeah, the point being that like he's gearing up for a comeback.
Yeah.
Because of course he is. Because of course there are people who are gonna hand wave what he did and whatever. So there's that, like the things that we allow. Mm-hmm. We love a celebrity comeback. Mm-hmm. Somebody does or says something shitty. Side tangent on cancel culture. The thing about cancel culture is it doesn't really apply to people with that much money and power. Mm-hmm. Like you may get the closest any celebrity has ever come to being truly canceled. That celebrity still has a job and makes money. Mm. Like they still have visibility. They still have a platform. They still have fans.
Yeah.
Like the people who really suffer from cancel culture are usually like small, ordinary people.
So it's interesting how in the course of this conversation, things have been popping to mind where I initially, when you were like, let's talk about celebrity culture fixation, I was like, okay. I was like, if you want to, because I love you. But then I'm thinking about like everything that happened with Miley Cyrus and Liam Hemsworth. Mm. Like I was wrapped up in that shit, mostly because I thought and continue to think that Miley is hot. But like, I think that there was a huge part of my, even for a person who says that they're disconnected from celebrity culture, like I still get wrapped up in it. Yeah. And in talking about like people getting canceled, there's a YouTube channel that I watch of people who just play board games. Because I'm a nerd. Again, if you haven't left the party yet, you should. And the one of the founders and like main talents on the show had gotten in trouble years ago for sort of like, he had said like misusing his power, essentially to like have relationships with fans in a way that was like, power dynamic, kind of creepy and gross, and had apologized for it. Well, one of the other people on the channel who rumors were flying that they were in a relationship started spreading rumors that he was doing this again, and he got kicked off the channel. So like he got canceled, and no one really knows why, right? Yeah. Like, is it because this jealous ex is like, hey, I don't want you to have your career anymore, so I'm going to ruin your life? Or is it because he actually did something he shouldn't have done and like deserved to be canceled? And it's just like really icky and gross.
Well, and you also have things like the whole Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like, there was no reason why that needed to be all over American television.
Mm-mm.
That was no reason that needed to be national or even international news.
Yeah.
Like, whoever people think was worse,
Mhm.
like, the situation was inarguably heinously toxic.
Yeah.
And whoever people think is worse, there was no reason why every single person in the country needed to weigh in on that situation
Mhm.
and have like detailed footage of it and opinions about it.
Yeah.
And that's something that we kind of feel entitled to with celebrities.
Yeah.
And that sense of entitlement too is so, like, I don't know, it makes me feel icky, where it's like, this is a person.
Mhm.
Like, they're a person who maybe made something you like
Mhm.
or was a part of making something you like. They did a really good job in a movie, or they made an album that saved you when you were 14.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not discounting that. I have albums that saved me when I was 14.
Yeah.
But that's all they owe you.
Yeah.
But there's very much this idea that if you create something that a lot of people love, you're both exempt from normal consequences,
Mm.
and you're also exempt in a very negative way from having a private life
Mm.
or being allowed to have boundaries.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, I was at a concert for The Used for their 15th anniversary tour.
Mhm.
It was very emotional. It was my version of church.
Yeah.
Everybody in a room scream singing about the fact that we lived, bitch,
Yeah.
with musicians who didn't think they would live at one point
Yeah.
long enough to be considered getting older.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was a beautiful experience. And that the music they made for us back then, and then the performance that they gave to us at that concert, that was all that we were owed for our ticket. Like,
Yeah.
that's all we paid for when we bought that concert ticket. But I remember standing outside, like you do after a concert, you'll stand outside hoping to like meet the person, get a glimpse of them, etc. And they didn't come out for a really long time.
Mm.
And we actually thought they weren't going to come out. And I was fine with that. Like, I was fine to wait until the bus either left or until they came out to talk to fans. And if they didn't come out to talk to fans, like, I get it. They just put on a rock concert.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not upset about that. But there were so many people in that crowd that were like acting like the person was ungrateful or like shitting on their fans
What?
if they didn't do that. And it was so weird. And it's always stuff like that. It's like if somebody, well, like celebrities who get a reputation for being rude to fans.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but are they rude to fans, or do they not want you to walk up to them in the grocery store
Right.
when they're trying to walk down the street?
Right. Or like take their kids to school or whatever. Yeah.
But there's like that parasocial relationship where people, they get so attached to the work of this person
Mm-hmm.
that they think that this person owes them something. They think that they have an entitlement to this person. They think they know this person,
Right.
and they don't. And then that, I think that also feeds into this whole like excusing celebrities for things, because then if this person that you feel like you have a relationship with does something terrible,
Yep.
and gets caught about it, then you're in this position of you've made this person so much a part of your life in a
Mhm.
like not entirely healthy way
Yeah.
that you either feel betrayed and upset at them, or you dismiss what they've done
Yeah.
because it's too painful to face it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, people do the latter a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
It's such a hard balance though, because I think back to, and we've talked about doing an episode about this too, in case people still haven't left your party, about like TV shows that became our entire personality, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so the show that I will talk about then and can reference now is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And so like Joss Whedon for a long time was like my idol, like the giver of all good things.
Everybody's.
Right.
I remember when that man could do no wrong in so many people's, every nerd's eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like the fact that he got the first Avengers movie and like all of that, you know, like it just seemed like there was no bottom, there was no top. You know,
Yeah.
like there was no end in sight for him. And then when all of the news came out, especially from like Charisma Carpenter and all these other people talking about how like the favoritism and things, and like, again, I'm a very peacekeeping person, right? Like, unless I'm sitting in the room with you, talking with you about it, I don't want to say one person is right or one person isn't, right? And his ex-wife coming out and saying the things that she has too, like, that's totally justified. Like, I'm not saying he should be excused for that, but I also can't say that I'm not going to enjoy the things that he's made because he turned out to be a bit of a trash person. Like, it's this hard line of like, well, everybody is sort of a trash person, but also, like, when does that line get crossed where it's too egregious, where now I won't watch it or I can't think about it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that line is extremely personal for everybody. And I've gone through that with myself and with other friends of mine, especially during like 2017, 2018.
Do you have other friends? Sorry.
Hang out. I go places. I talk to people.
I just was like, because you're my only friend. So.
Oh, God. But, like, when all of this news was coming out about all of this stuff and all of these horrific abuses of power and privilege, that people were like, so many people were using their position, their power, their celebrity to do horrific things.
Yeah.
And had been for, ages and ages. And it wasn't news to anybody who worked in the industry,
right,
but it was news to a lot of people who consumed the art that's made by that industry. And I remember like going through, I actually purged my DVD collection because there was so much of it at once that it was like, I'm not going to enjoy this anymore.
Fair.
Like, I'm going to see this actor's face. And every time I see this actor's face, I'm going to think of what this actor was doing behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Like what the fame that they garnered from this film allowed them to get away with. And that made it really hard for a long time to enjoy almost anything, because it was like, it was so prominent, it was so prevalent. And every single time somebody says, okay, but so-and-so would never do this.
Yeah.
They're the next person to be revealed to have done it. And it's always like painful because you get attached to the stories that these people have told and to the beautiful things they've created, because unfortunately shitty people can create great art. Yeah. Like, it'd be so much simpler if they couldn't. Well, but they absolutely can.
Yeah.
And like, it does feel like betrayal because this person that made something you love so much and that maybe got you through something, or that maybe is very nostalgic for you for a happier time in your life or whatever, was such a shitty person and used the like fame and adoration that you and other people like you gave to them for that art to treat people horribly and hurt people. Yeah. And with Whedon, I do think it's very personal. I don't judge people, especially like if you're sitting at home with your Buffy DVDs and you're watching them. You bought those in like, I know you bought those in 2006 or whatever.
Wow. Okay.
You're not
feeling seen.
You're not like, he's not benefiting from that. Yeah. Like, and I also, it's also weird in television because so many things go into a single episode of television, let alone multiple seasons. When we finally talk about our television, mine was going to be 15-year Fever Dream Supernatural. And just the sheer number of people involved in a single episode of television, let alone...
It takes a small army.
Multiple seasons over multiple presidential administrations. That, like, do you cut that out of your life? Right. For one person that was involved in it who was a piece of shit? Like, what about Marty Noxon and Jane Espenson and all of the other women who did so much incredible work on a show like Buffy? And
who have come out and said, we've never seen that side of Joss, right? Yeah. Like, and not to say that exonerates him at all, right? But I think there's something to be said for consistency of character, right? And it's impossible to know.
Yeah.
I think is what it comes down to, is it's impossible to know. And I was going to say, if this was like caveman times, right, where we're all sitting around telling each other stories around the fire, while the oxen, I don't know, something like that. If you're a paleontologist, let me know. But yeah, like if we're all sitting around and like Auntie Og is going on about like this really great story, and then the next day she goes out and like kills a bear, right? Like, or you know, like kills the leader of the tribe. I'm still going to think the story was a good story, even though Auntie Og might be a terrible person, right? Like,
Yeah.
like it's, I don't know, like that part of our brain that functions in morality has a really hard time with separating the art from the artist.
Yeah. For me, too, I kind of go through a mental calculation in my head. Again, this is always going to be a personal, like, case-by-case calculation people have to make for themselves.
Sure.
For me, I go through a calculation in my head where it's like, okay, based on what I know about what this person has done,
Mm-hmm.
does that change my experience of the art?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it does. Like, I'll never watch another Woody Allen movie. Especially, and if I was forced to, I wouldn't be able to unsee all of the things I know about him because of, like, the flags were always red.
Yeah.
You know? But also, like, but something like Buffy, like, yeah, it's not 2024's perfect version of feminism.
No.
But it's still an important feminist text.
Right.
It still made me feel empowered when
Yep.
I was a teenage girl. It's still, in some ways, more validating than some stuff that's come after it.
Yeah.
Because things like Buffy isn't a quote-unquote strong female character
Mm-hmm.
by just embodying, like, whatever toxic masculinity values.
Right. Right.
Like, all of that is still true. And so for me, it is that. Does it change my experience of the art to know what this person has done?
Yeah.
Does it ruin it for me? Just base level.
Yeah.
And sometimes it does. And sometimes it doesn't. Then it's who's benefiting from
Yeah.
me continuing to engage with this?
Yeah. That's
Who's
a good
being
question.
hurt by me continuing to engage with this?
Yeah.
Something like J.K. Rowling.
Mm-hmm.
She has made it very blatantly clear at every opportunity that if you continue to engage with her work, she takes that as condoning her beliefs and encouragement to continue.
Yeah.
And she has made it very clear that she will continue to use any cultural cachet she has and any money she makes to further anti-trans legislation in the UK.
Right.
And probably beyond if she can.
Yeah.
So for me,
Which clearly our podcast supports wholly.
ugh,
From the first half of this episode, you know that we don't like the queers. And we side with J.K. Rowling in all things.
your self-hatred is showing.
Thank you. I put it on special for you.
That was a joke for anyone still at this party. I have to tell
And
you.
if you're not at this party, that joke was not for you. So stop laughing, you fucker.
but like, so for me, that's a different calculation, right? Like,
Yeah.
she's benefiting from this.
Yeah.
The bigots that she empowers are benefiting from this. If I continue to engage with Harry Potter and continue to, like, boost her cultural cachet,
Yeah.
she's using any money I spend on her property, her intellectual property, to harm trans people.
Right.
And for me, even if she didn't ruin, like, even if knowing she was a TERF didn't ruin Harry Potter for me, that would.
Yeah. Yeah.
Knowing that these books that helped me so much as a kid were written by somebody who would rather not have helped me,
Yeah.
that changes things for me.
Yeah.
Somebody who actively wants to hurt me and people I care about, that changes things for me.
And I absolutely, I agree with that. And I think that's valid. I think there's also something to be said for, and we don't need to get off on the wrong foot by alienating all of our listeners by getting into the Harry Potter argument. But I think there is also something to be said for, like, the story is a good story, right? And if you like the story of Harry Potter, that doesn't mean that you're a TERF. It doesn't mean that you are a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
It's finding a way to enjoy that story while also standing up for the things that you believe in, right? I think that those two things can take place in different arenas. It's part of why I don't typically engage in celebrity culture, because like,
Yeah.
To me, I would rather be ignorant in that sense, and be able to enjoy the art that is meaningful to me. But I also do agree that there are lines to be drawn there.
Yeah. Like I have all of the books purchased when I was, a kid and they were coming out, then thrown away for non-turf reasons when I was in high school because I had an evangelical grandmother who guilted me into it.
I was never allowed to read them.
And then I rebought them in college, which was, again, way before any of this mess started to come out. But, I still have them.
Yeah.
I don't display them prominently in my house.
Fair.
I still have them in a cupboard.
Yeah.
I don't think that I'll throw them away. I haven't been able to bring myself to read them.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever will, but I know I won't spend any more money on anything new she does.
That's fair.
I won't recommend her books to people.
I think it's an argument for being responsible with the way that we engage with people who are known for their art and are known for, their art on whatever level that might be. The first example that comes to my head is Kim Kardashian. Can what she does be called art? It's questionable, but there are people who are fans and like it, and that's fine. Like, I also think that some of her views are problematic, but like,
yeah,
nobody's perfect, right? Like, you're not getting out of this life with an A++. So
yeah,
do the best you can, try to give grace where you can, and also know where to draw your lines.
Yeah. And I can't believe I've gotten this far into a conversation about celebrity culture without mentioning her.
I know. But I honestly was like, are we going to go to an hour and a half so that we can talk about
Taylor Swift. So I'm a huge Swiftie.
Yeah.
I haven't always been, but she got me on the Red album.
Mm-hmm.
It came out when I was 22. It had the song 22 on it. Also, it's a breakup album, and I had gone through a really bad breakup.
Yeah.
Like, the guy is the guy I think of when I hear All Too Well 10-minute version. He is the guy I think of when I hear I Knew You Were Trouble.
Yeah.
Like, all of those songs sound like processing my terrible relationship that ended badly.
Mm-hmm.
So she got me. And that was before she was always very well known, like pretty much from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But she really blew up with the album after that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the celebrity culture insanity really kicked in.
Yeah.
Where it was like she started getting stalkers and she started being everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, where even she at one point said that she felt like she was getting close to being like oversaturating.
Yeah.
And like people were going to get sick of hearing about her. And that's kind of what happened in like 2015, 2016. All of the Kanye drama reared its ugly head again. I'm not going to give you all a T-Swift lesson unless it's going to make you leave the party. Maybe that'll be an episode, is my T-Swift info dump.
I feel like that would be totally appropriate, because I think there are probably other things that I could do the same.
Yes.
Yeah, we've talked about a couple of ideas. We'll workshop it.
Yeah. But I mean, she's actually unfortunately a really great example of like all of the problems with celebrity culture.
Yeah.
Like, there are so many things that she could get away with because her fans just wouldn't care.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of her fans just wouldn't care. There's a level of entitlement
mm-hmm.
to her that a lot of people feel because they are a fan and they've been a fan for a really long time that is beyond the pale.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a whole segment of Swifties that had an entire meltdown when she dared to say in the liner notes on her recent re-release of 1989 Taylor's version,
mm-hmm.
That reflecting back on her early 20s, when she kind of withdrew from relationships with men for a while, she stopped dating and she started focusing on friendships with the women in her life, which she didn't really have when she was younger. And she thought, surely if I'm not dating, surely if I'm just hanging out with my girlfriends, people won't sexualize that.
Mm.
And then she realized that they could and would sexualize that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people felt weirdly betrayed by her saying that because there's a subset of Swifties that is extremely invested in the idea that Taylor Swift is a closeted lesbian who is sending them secret messages about her closetedness through her music.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go any further down that rabbit hole, but it got so prominent, like speculation about her sexuality got so prominent that there was a New York Times article about it.
Oh my God.
Like recently.
See, I don't get involved with celebrity culture, and it's stuff like this, like it blows my mind. Like, who cares? I'm not saying that Taylor Swift is not an important person, obviously a cultural icon, but like, I don't know, maybe it's the deep down part of me that will always strive to be a hipster that is just like anti anything that's super popular. And I don't hate Taylor Swift, but I think it's so interesting how sometimes these communities get so marginalized, right? Like they get so pushed to the edge of like, oh, well, you're a Swiftie. Okay, box checked, moving on, right? But like, are you a lesbian Swiftie? Are you a whatever, like, scarf at Maggie Gyllenhaal's? I know that's a thing. Like, are you that Swiftie? Right?
I'm
like,
so proud of you right now. I feel like this is my fault somehow.
No, it's not. It's not. It's because it's inescapable, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, truthfully, like there are different segments of every particular thing that you like that can be dissected even further and further and further to get down to the heart of what it really is.
Yeah. Oh, well, and even like organically within Taylor Swift fandom, there's things like which album is your album,
right?
Like, or even like what kind, are you an indie folk Swiftie? Are you a pop Swiftie? Are you a country Swiftie? Like,
right.
What kind of Swiftie are you?
I think that's why I never really got into her, because she was getting really popular when she was in her country phase, and I was doing everything within my power to fight against being that person.
But yeah, like she's really a perfect example of all of the problems with it, because she could do a lot of terrible things and a vast majority of her fans would excuse it.
Yeah.
And I don't say that to like shit on Swifties. I am one. And there are a lot of Swifties who don't have a problem being critical of some of the things she does. Don't have a problem like really acknowledging and examining the issues with like the excesses of celebrity culture that inherently apply to her because she is a like billionaire international superstar at this point. And of course there are no ethical billionaires.
Right.
There's insane things like the fact that on the one hand, she flies a private jet everywhere, which is terrible for the environment. On the other hand, can
you imagine her on a public plane?
Can you imagine being stuck at that airport the day that Taylor Swift tries to fly a commercial?
No.
Also, like just recently, she had a stalker who was arrested at her house, released, and I think within like 3 hours, he was back at her house.
Good God almighty.
So that's the kind of, like, when that's the kind of thing you deal with on a daily basis, can you really fly commercial?
No.
Like, can you take public transport?
There are certain things that are out of reach for you.
Is that safe for you or anyone around you?
Right.
But then that's not something that's, I remember posting something online where it was like, look, yeah, private jets are terrible for the environment, but if Taylor Swift is the first celebrity you've ever gotten angry at for flying their private jet all over the place, you are not the bastion of like woke progressivism you think you are, because all your favorite big celebrities, like Beyonce has a private jet and uses it. Like, all celebrities at that level of fame are doing that.
Yeah.
And that's a problem with the way that we treat celebrities in culture, the things that we allow them to get away with, the things that we feel entitled to from them, and the way that they're positioned within society.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason, as much as I love her music, there is no reason why this woman should be so famous that we know everything about her love life, There's no reason why we should, why the details of her movements around the country to go see her boyfriend's football games should be inescapable news.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why she shouldn't be able to get on a commercial flight without being hounded.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a self-perpetuating nightmare.
Yeah.
The way that we treat celebrities.
Yeah. I mean, it truly seems to, again, like walk that line of sort of being the pinnacle of human, but then also being stripped of what it means to be human, right? Like you are put on a pedestal as one of the greatest humans that there is, which strips you of the rights that other humans have.
Yeah, and for dubious reasons too.
Right.
Strips you not only of the rights, but of the responsibilities in a way.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you can get away with almost anything. On the other hand, you don't get any privacy.
Yeah.
And people kind of treat you like they know you or they own a piece of you because you made an album that they really liked.
Right.
It's really ugly. It makes me feel really icky.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's for dubious reasons because yes, music is so important. Art is so important. What's that Dead Poet Society quote? Those are the things that we stay alive for.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that. I think that art and music and all of the beautiful things that people can create with their brains make life joyous.
Yeah.
I really believe that. I don't believe that those are necessarily the people that we should put I don't think we should put anybody on a pedestal, but if we're building a pyramid of pedestals and we're putting somebody at the top, I don't know that it should be pop stars and actors and,
Yeah.
I don't know who should be up there, but I don't think it should be that.
Yeah.
And I'm a writer. I hope one day to be a writer that people read things by. I don't think that would ever entitle me to be on a pedestal.
Right.
And I wouldn't want to be there.
Yeah. And I think also, right, if you're still listening to this podcast, we don't want to be famous. Don't put us on a pedestal.
I don't think there's any danger of that.
That's so rude. That's so rude.
Nobody's at this party. We've successfully cleared the
Are you
room.
all gone?
They're all gone.
Everybody's gone. Well, if you're not gone, thank you so much for listening. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
How do we want to wrap this up?
How many times did we say the word patriarchy in this podcast?
I don't know if we said it any time.
You said it at least once.
Shut up.
I know you did. I heard you. Because you said because of the patriarchy.
I did. Okay, so I was blaming it. Does that count?
Yeah, it does. The question is, did this episode of the podcast pass the Bechdel test?
I mean, I feel like it did, even though we talked about Dr. Alan Hart.
Yes.
So I guess if you are strictly running by the Bechdel test, then no.
No.
But
it's
I
fine.
did leave out...
You know what? I'm fine with failing for Dr.
You know
Alan
what?
Hart.
I am too. I am too. He's a real one. And
I'm sorry, Alison Bechdel.
I did purposely leave out the name of the cis doctor, the cis surgeon, whose notes, what's his name, Katz went through.
That's fine.
So I feel like that was my effort to sidestep the freaking Bechdel test. Well, we didn't talk about true crime. Not really. We talked a little bit about stalking. So hopefully that was enjoyable. If not, we'll know soon enough.
We'll know when nobody listens to episode 2.
Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Bye.